I want to share a story about an anthropologist who was studying a remote African tribe. And he had been working in the village for some time, and the day before he was to return home, he met with all the children of the tribe and decided he was going to play a game with them, kind of a celebration game. And so he had this large basket of fruit, and he put it on the other side of the field where they were sitting together, and he said, all right, I'm going to count to 3, and then you guys run, and the first one to the basket of fruit gets to have the whole basket of fruit. And so he was like, 1, 2, 3. And all the kids stood up, held hands, and ran together towards the basket of fruit. And he was shocked. He was like, whoa, why did you run together? One of you could have had the whole basket. And one of the little girls said, well, how can I be happy if somebody else is sad? This is a definition of Ubuntu, which my favorite way of describing Ubuntu comes from Desmond Tutu. And he says, Ubuntu means I am because you are. My success and my failures are bound up in yours. We are made for each other. One part of the human family. And I love this idea, and I've talked about it quite a bit over the years in this community. And I was thinking about, like we have all of these beautiful stories. We have experiences in our own lives of what it means to be family, to belong to one another. I believe it was Rumi who says that we're just walking each other home. And yet I have all this demonstration out in the circumstantial situations of life where it is just not the manifest reality. And I was thinking about these kids where there didn't need to be a conversation. Nobody had to call a committee. Nobody had to have a meeting about the basket of fruit. They just got up, held hands, and got the fruit together, and then sat down and enjoyed it together. And they were probably thinking, what's wrong with this dude making us play this stupid game, right? And I thought about that's a cultural norm, right? It's a cultural norm which allowed them to just move in a belief and a value that they held together. I'm going to share another story with you. Recently, one of the folks participating in leadership in our community said to me in a much larger conversation about a struggle he was having with a woman of color in our community. And he said to me, we need more women of color like you. And I thought, oh, I know you do. But what that described to me was what I believe is at the core of what we get twisted around this concept of human family, around Ubuntu, which was he needs a woman of color like me who is cisgender, raised middle class, speaks white fluently because my mother is white. He needs more like me because I'm more the same as him. And we really get confused around this idea of my success and failures are bound up in yours because we really don't want to be in family with people different than us. We don't want to rise to the challenge of belonging to one another when we simply confuse the crap out of each other. So we think, I can figure out how to love you if I can recognize what's the same about us. Right? That I think I can do. If I could just look at you and look for the places where we are similar, then I can find some love in my heart. that is not what oneness means. That is not what the wholeness of life means. The eye is not the ear. There is no body without the totality of the differences that make up the body. And I think part of the reckoning is we can't change culture, which I don't know about you, but I believe we're being invited to cultural change. Anybody else on that page with me? We can't change culture until we reckon with what has gotten in the way, with what misbeliefs and misunderstandings are keeping us from the experience of wholeness. We have to get honest with ourselves about, okay, what is in the way for me personally? The one sin, and I'm air quoting on purpose, because all sin means, translated from Hebrew, is missing the mark. So nobody's inherently bad up in here, okay? But the one sin in Science of Mind are teaching in the New Thought Christian movement, which we belong to, the one thing we don't define it as sin, but we define it as the big problem, is belief and action in separateness. That's the biggie. That is the foundational misbelief that's got us twisted in every situation in our lives. There's something going on where we believe we are separate from God, and there's something going on where we believe we are separate from one another. And every single one of us struggles with the ideas and beliefs that we uniquely hold around separateness. I want to share with you from Rev. Angel Kyoto William, her book, Radical Dharma. This is a huge evolutionary leap to be able to see past sameness and likeness as the lens through which we view our potential to care for and love one another. She goes on to say, interconnectedness takes us somewhere else entirely different, because it doesn't merely demand a right, it asserts a truth. Let's hang out with that idea for a moment. Interconnectedness is not a demand for a birthright. Interconnectedness is true. Something that is true, whether we acknowledge it or experience it or not, it's still true. It is not something we have to create. It's something we have to allow. Just like any other truth that is true, whether we like it or not. Just like the planet we live on is round, and for many years we were sure it was flat. The fact that we really believed the flat earth was true did not make it true. Truth is truth. Interconnectedness is true, capital T, true. And there's a power in that when we choose to allow that truth to be our experience. Joel Goldsmith said in the reading that Krista shared with us, the more God you let through, that you realize, that you acknowledge, that you make your conscious reality, the more individual you become. That almost feels counterintuitive, right? Because we are so convinced that sameness is oneness that I think many of us believe, like, the more spiritual we become, The more holy we become, the more alike we will become. How many of you come here because you want to be in a room full of like-minded people? Just tell the truth, y'all. We seek that. We seek that because it's comfortable. It's easier. We seek likeness and sameness because it also affirms our ideas about ourselves. Right? I was finding myself recently so frustrated with the world. All I wanted to do was be in a room full of Black queer women. Like everybody else could kiss it. Because that was the only thing that felt like it could comfort me. But are we seeking comfortable or are we seeking wholeness? We cannot call ourselves people on a spiritual journey and continue to value sameness more than wholeness. And I think we get to get honest with ourselves about that as well. Motivation is everything. What motivates you to seek God? I know my great motivation, especially in the early days, is I just wanted to feel better. I didn't really care about the rest of y'all. I just wanted some way to be okay in my own skin. And I figured I had tried everything in the human universe to get there. I mean, everything. And since none of that worked, I was like, well, the only thing I got left is God. I haven't tried that yet. I think a lot of us end up in rooms like these because we've hit a bottom of some kind in our lives. We're experiencing some sort of discomfort to such a degree that we're like, all right, okay, God. Okay, let's try God, because none of this is working. I just am like hanging out and suffering all the time. But if you stick with it long enough, you sit on that meditation pillow long enough, you begin to discover something else. Spiritual growth, spiritual maturity, transformation, as we like to call it here in this community, it requires your stretching beyond what you knew, what you once understood about the cosmos, about yourself, about God. And it requires us to sit still in meditation and spiritual practice and prayer long enough to get beyond our little unit of wholeness. In that meditation we just did together, there was an invitation to expand beyond our own bodies. How do you think that becomes possible if there isn't a greater wholeness that we belong to? How many of you have had that experience where you suddenly lose the edge of yourself and realize that the edge that you thought was this skin, this flesh, was not the edge? Yes, anybody in meditation and prayer and song and dance, you just became aware that you were something greater. Any of you who've done energy medicine, chakra studies, polarity, any of those practices is about the unending nature of our bodies. Our energy bodies go beyond our skin. They're all up in each other's energy bodies. and it's infinite. This is the wholeness that is really at the center of the longing we have for God. Even that longing to feel better is a pathway to the realization of wholeness, of holy. And the only way to that experience, which I will share more from Rev Angel, but the only way to actually make that real, rather than like la la la, weird, new agey, blah blah. The only way to make that real and have that be in our actual experience is to get out of the way what's in the way. Rumi said, do not seek for love, seek the barriers keeping you from it. Do not seek for God. Seek the barriers keeping you from it. Do not seek for peace, for freedom, for liberation. Seek the barriers that are keeping you from it. And the first barrier in creating and crafting and experiencing beloved community, which is a micro of the macro, yes, is seeking the ways that you have limited your ability to love because of difference. And whatever those differences may be. Political, physical, ideological, religious. I mean, I'm going to tell on my practitioners for a minute, but I had to explain myself about why I wanted to use Corinthians this week. Because people get twisted about the Bible, for God's sake. I'm like, y'all, you know why we're reading this, right? It is the perfect description of wholeness right now. But it was a conversation that had to be had, and it was like, no, the Bible. We get separate in all kinds of ways. I remember my first couple of years in this pulpit, and this was before I was a licensed minister. I had to apologize before I used any Christian text. I had to be like, okay, I'm about to read something from the Bible, okay? Everybody get ready. As if that sacred text was just something crappy compared to the Hindus or the Bhagavad Gita or the Science of Mind textbook. Like, how is it that we call ourselves, particularly in this community, we tend towards the liberal, we tend towards the inclusive, we value it, it's on our website. But don't let me preach from the Bible. Everybody but the Christians. What are the places you limit your love? I'm not asking you to make friends with institutions. They are actually not a thing. You can't hold an institution in your hand. I'm not asking you to love institutions. I'm asking you to seek the barriers that limit your loving. Rev Angel went on to say in Radical Dharma, properly envisioned liberation movements transport us into the position of asserting the undeniable truth of thriving as human inevitability. Properly envisioned liberation movements are not about the best policies, the best laws. properly envisioned liberation movements move us towards the inevitable, human thriving. Because when you thrive, we all thrive. When you stand up and grab my hand to move towards our good, we all move towards our good. And when we decide that there's some hands I just will not hold, we are in the great sin of separation. So rather than declare yourself separate, which means you've just stepped out of your conscious awareness of your oneness with the one, that's what you give up in that declaration. You give up your wholeness when you declare yourself separate from anyone, from any sentient being, from any piece of life. But every time we grab a hand and move towards good, we are making ourselves more whole. Every time we look into the eyes of a beloved and recognize how different we are, with joy and curiosity and wonder, we move towards greater wholeness. When we move into a space with someone who we truly believe is way too different, for whatever reasons, they're loud, they're obnoxious, they're voting for the wrong people, they believe the wrong thing, whatever the thing. When you can move into that connection, because there's never not connection, we just choose to be aware of it or not. But when you move into that with some wonder, like, wow, God shows up like this too. Wow. And I love the definition Brene Brown, if anybody's watched or read Atlas of the Heart. That's some good juicy stuff for those of us on a journey. But she was explaining the difference between curiosity and wonder. And curiosity is like to be curious about a thing, to learn more, to act on what we learn. And wonder is just, wow. I don't have to do anything about that, but just, wow. So I don't need you to be curious about my difference, about their difference. I need you to be in wonder of it. Wonder at the incredible ways that God shows up, that blow our mind. Sometimes in the like, wow, WTF way. But just to be in wonder. And then the next question we get to sit with is, how can I love this? Everybody just held their breath. You can breathe. Are you holding your breath at home? How can I love this? One has to penetrate the truth of interdependence, such that it moves me, it moves you into a place which I am not doing something for you, but it's actually about me, which is tied together because there is no separation. There is no separation. And this goes internally as well as externally. What are the things in yourself you have deemed unacceptable, outside of God, less than holy, profane maybe. Because the work is the same. The more God, Joel Goldsmith told us, the more God you allow, that you let through, that you express, that you realize in your own being, the more individual you become. The more your unique, gorgeous, U-shaped version and expression of the Holy Blessed One becomes more you. You don't lose your individuality, your authenticity, your uniqueness. It becomes more whole. And your beautiful uniqueness has to include all of you. So if there's something on your body that you think, gotta go, that's not God. If there is something in your mental state that you think, that's not God. There's something in your pleasure, in your kinks, in your desires, in your loves, in your expressions that you think somehow is not holy, then you are practicing separation. And you can ask yourself, how can I love this? How can I love the stretch marks? How can I love the wrinkles? How can I love the gray? I love my gray. But whatever is limiting your ability to love must be reckoned with. Inside and outside. Human thriving depends on our conscious awareness and experience of our interconnectedness. Depends on our awe and wonder about what does that mean? How can I live that more? One of the things I sit with sometimes is not only how can I love it, but how am I dependent on it? Because I know that there is only one, so I know that I impact the whole, and every little piece of the whole impacts me because interdependence. So this thing that I think I cannot love, this human, this idea, this belief very different from mine that I think I cannot love, yet I am dependent on it as well. So maybe if I seek out the ways that we're connected, I consciously become aware of the interconnection to the thing I cannot love, maybe that's my route into more love. Because I know there's a connection here somewhere. There's no other possibility. I don't need it to be sameness. I don't need it to be shaped like me, look like me, think like me. But I need to grow my understanding, my consciousness to include it and recognize the connection. Right? Just like a thread in the tapestry of life itself, there is a connection. My job is to become conscious of it. And sometimes it's in the understanding of our differences, like, oh, I'm really different than that. Wow. God's big. To hold all those differences, to include things that seem so far apart. I want to grow up and be like God. I want to hold more too. I want to have the freedom that comes from that. Spend a moment right now thinking about a thing in your life that feels outside of your love. And then just imagine yourself putting your arms around it, cradling it, loving on it. And breathe into that even if you are making it up right now. But what I want you to notice is when you do that, when you wrap your arms a little wider, when you include a little more, you will begin to have this more spacious experience internally. You will actually notice it's a little less crowded in there. This is what freedom feels like, that spaciousness. When all of a sudden the room you've been giving to conflict, the room you've been giving, the energy you've been spending on the limits, all of a sudden comes back into your experience because you've opened your arms wider. You just grew your heart bigger. That is freedom. That is how you liberate yourself from limitation, from feeling too small or boxed in or not enough. Which is why most of us come into rooms like these, is we want to be free from our own limitations. We want to be free from our own misunderstanding of our not enoughness. That's why we seek God. And in the seeking itself, we discover the isness that we are. And the more we include, the more we allow, the greater we expand. The more we open, the more we thrive. Thriving humanity depends not only on interdependence, but on diversity. You know, I'm a gardener. You know, and I've done a lot of study on permaculture and indigenous practices on what makes a garden resilient. I know some people are freaking out right now about food shortages and the crappy ass soil around the world. And so I spend a lot of time pondering this, and I love the metaphor of the garden. Maybe garden and music, my two favorite metaphors, and things to be engaged in. But the most resilient garden is the most diverse garden. The more diversity you've got happening, going and growing in your soil, the more health your soil creates. We don't know who this quote came from, or I don't know who this quote came from, but one perspective is too small for the truth. Have you heard that one? Our transformation, our freedom, our liberation depends on these incredibly varied, different ways of being and seeing and loving. Our human thriving depends on it. Which means my wholly unique, individualized expression is required for the thriving of all. And so is yours. Did you know you were that important? My thriving depends on your wholeness. My ability to love limits or expands your ability to love. Your limited ability to love limits my thriving. Because interdependence is the truth. There's no getting around it. This one family thing, there's no escape. You can pretend all you want. They're not in, they're out. I'm gonna hold hands with these people, not those people. You can do that for the rest of your days. Then you actively participate in my demise. When we do that, we actively participate in shrinking the experience of love. And you limit your own discovery of how awesome your wholeness is, because you haven't been stretched all the way yet. And that perspective that's so different than yours might be the very thing that stretches you into more of who you are. That different way of being or loving or living might be the very path for you to grow beyond what you thought you could be. Especially when we enter in all those moments and all those differences and all those places where we believe there are limits. When you enter into those spaces curious, with wonder, trusting that there is only one. And even though that song was lovely and beautiful that we did this morning, I don't need to see me in your eyes to love you. I may look in your eyes and go, I don't know what's going on in there, but wow. Wow, God looks like this too. This is new to me. Wow. So your homework this week is the Buddhist metta practice. This is a practice that the Buddhists use to grow their love, to grow their capacity to include more when it feels impossible. We bless what feels like we cannot love. So the metta practice starts with yourself. And if you're having a hard self-love day, because we have them, I want you to imagine you blessing your baby self, your infant self. And you bless it, seeing it in your mind's eye, whatever works for you. You bless it by saying, may you be free from fear. May you be free from compulsion. May you be blessed with love. May you be blessed with compassion. And then when you're feeling all resonant and gooey about yourself, I want you to extend it to your circle of beloveds, people it's easy for you to love. And you're going to bless them. May you be free from fear. May you be free from compulsion. May you be blessed by love. May you be blessed by compassion. And you can make up your own words that are more resonant. May you be blessed with peace. May you be blessed with good looks. I don't care. Just bless. then you're going to reach out into your city and country and the world itself. And you're going to include everybody. And you're going to bless, and you're going to bless. And when you're nice and juicy and full of love and all the good feelings, you are going to bless whatever you cannot love right now. Whatever, whoever. And you are going to bless them until that good, juicy feelings got you connected to what feels unlovable. I love you. Let's anchor this in prayer. I know beyond any shadow of any doubt that there is only one. And what I know about this one, that it is holy. It is good. It has no edges. It is beyond the beyond, and it is right here, right now, in my flesh, in my bones, in my breath, in my mind, in my heart, in my understanding, and beyond. And because I know how good God is, I know that that is true for you, for your beloveds, for this community, for this city, for this state, for this globe, for every person that ever was, that ever will be, and that is right now, that feels really hard to love. I know that God is moving in them like God is moving in me, and God is moving in you, and God is moving for good in every set of circumstances without fail. I know that every moment, every thought, every misbelief is an invitation to stretch further, grow my arms wider, and bring in more. And with wonder and curiosity, as I accept that invitation, I let it reveal more in me, liberating me from misunderstandings and misbeliefs and misperception, so that I may know myself more whole. And I know that you do the same, because the holy yes we have said has already been said. We are here on purpose. There is breath in our bodies on purpose. We have been given a divine assignment to recognize ourselves as the Holy Blessed One. And as I recognize myself as the Holy Blessed One, I have no choice but to recognize you and to celebrate that and to glorify that. There is no other reason to be walking the earth. And so I allow that expansion, I allow that blossoming, I allow that perfect unfolding to reveal me more. And I celebrate it. I thank you, God, for bringing me here by divine appointment, for allowing me to revel in the good, to be an expression of that, a revealer of that, an embodiment of that, an aliveness of you. Thank you. And I just let it be in all the grace for you and for me. Anchor this with me by saying amen, and so it is.